Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to more Blizzcon coverage as we're nearing the end of it, actually. We've covered pretty much all of the games except for the beloved World of Warcraft, and we actually have to divide that into two this time around because as much as people are thinking I am not going to talk about this, I am actually going to address WoW Classic. And I actually did, spoiler alert, I had a video that was actually prepped up before BlizzCon, kind of detailing the reaction that went into the WoW Classic demo and the outrage that came out of that. But we're going to avoid that, and I'm going to try and play Peacemaker as much as possible because, like, when I initially saw some of the criticisms that were being made, I kind of noticed a very similar concept with Diablo Immortal, and frankly, where I think that gaming journalism and a few other outlets could have done better, I instead decided to go the simpler, the more peaceful route, and I do have disagreements with the Classic community, but I'll go ahead and voice them in a more constructive manner. So, without further ado, WoW Classic. First of all, the announcement of it coming out in summer 2019. Now, you'll notice they didn't actually put a day on it. And I think that's by design, because once we actually get into the WoW Classic information, I have a feeling that's going to be delayed fairly quickly. And again, one of the speculated release dates for WoW Classic was going to be the actual 15th anniversary of Vanilla WoW. So I think that's not out of the question at this point, and we'll get into that as we go along. So there really was only one panel aside from the Q&A for both WoW as well as WoW Classic. And the WoW Classic panel was basically kind of going through the process of how to bring WoW Classic back, as well as go into what's going to be in it and what isn't. I'm going to kind of skip half of that because for a diehard Blizzard fan, for a diehard WoW fan, that is amazing, and you really should just watch it, and it should be available on YouTube somewhere. I already saw a couple of people putting up that panel. And if you're interested in how they're actually able to do it, that would be the way to be able to go about that. I know programmers. I can't exactly explain programming to people. But to kind of sum it up, they actually tried to look for older builds of Classic WoW to be able to mess around with and see if they could release as a client. And they actually did find one in the most unlikely of places. They thought they had lost all the code, but when they found an old 2008 build, which at that point I think would have been Burning Crusade prepping for Wrath of the Lich King, they actually found a backup of a backup of a backup within the file directory in 2008. That was towards a WoW 1.12 build. So at that point, they kind of saved their butts on this one, and I actually kind of giggled at that personally, because I love the fact that, again, I don't really have much love for the Nostalrius people, and part of me thinks that when they actually got invited out to the campus, that they just basically tried to hold Blizzard over a barrel and say, we restored your client, and you need to pay us this much. And I would now like to just be a fly on the wall when Blizzard approached them and said, we already have a client, and we are working on it. And hush, hush, kind of thing. And I kind of wonder if that was maybe the threat that Nostalrius had made the following year. You didn't make any announcements. If you don't, we will. And I have a feeling that behind the scenes, like, lawyers went into play. That's my assessment. I don't have evidence of that, but it does make a lot of sense as to Nostalrius basically making a very, what they thought, powerful threat. And it's just simply they knew that they had the 1.12 build and that they were messing around with it. But suffice to say, they've actually been spending the last few years trying to make this 1.12 build work with current server tech and current WoW tech. And it's been a very arduous process. They even kind of outlined the problems that they were having with it. Some models just didn't work. There were actually some funny pictures of, like, Threshodons and Lochmadon walking on all fours, even though they're supposed to have fins, of the dam not being restored at Lochmadon, but there's still water there. It was actually very interesting to be able to go through and see the processes they had to go through to be able to make WoW Classic work. Like I said, if you want more details into that, watch that panel, because they go into all of the problems that they've been able to outline, some of which is just missing assets that don't necessarily work with the modern engine, or basically a difference of design philosophies from 2004 to now. So again, like, go watch that if you really want to be able to see it. But let's go ahead and get into what is not, what they're currently working on and what is going to be in WoW Classic and what is not. First of all, they admitted openly they are not done with the game. They're still working on a lot of the bugs. They're still working on a lot of the asset problems. They're also working towards restoring aspects like capital cities, the dungeons and raids of Classic WoW, the actual PvP system that was in place in Vanilla WoW. They're looking to restore all of that as much as possible towards this build, which is 1.12, which would have been released around 2006. So I have a feeling like this is either the one that prepped before Burning Crusade or the patch before that, and they just so happen to have that. Their high priority on restoring WoW Classic is going to be built towards the more social dynamics. They are literally asking themselves, does this feature fit into Classic? Does it not? I already know a lot of people are freaking out on, or they were freaking out on the WoW Classic demo, seeing like LFR framework and everything like that. And Ian Hasekostas openly admitted a lot of this stuff is integrating over into the modern engine, and that framework is still there. They just need to take it out. So a lot of people were panicking for really no reason. It's just that they hadn't gotten to that point yet, and they wanted to be able to show the WoW Classic community what they had been working on. And so you got Westfall and you got the Barrens, but you also got a lot of modern framework in there too. So here are the things that will actually not be in Classic, and they confirmed it. The cross-realm grouping, not in Classic. Makes sense. That really wasn't available there. Flying is definitely not in Classic. That was a Burning Crusade trait, and it doesn't make sense here. Achievements are not going to move over to Classic. They're not there anymore. There also will not be a unified auction house, and before people go, what? Now, in the current client, there are unified auction houses. Every auction house is one auction house, but back in the day, there were technically 3 auction houses. There was the Alliance auction house, and there was the Horde auction house. I should say that those still exist here, but there's only one of each. And then there was a third neutral auction house that a lot of people, like me, if we wanted some of our gold to move over to characters of the opposite faction, we utilized the neutral auction house to be able to get that money over, or to be able to get an item that, say, our previous characters have been able to find, and we were able to actually move over. So that is not going to be unified. There is an Alliance, a Horde, and a neutral auction house, just like there was in the original. The debuff limit, however, where it was really, really small in Classic WoW, is now being upped to pretty much modern code. It's not as big as modern code yet, but it's pretty big now. So you don't have the problems of debuffs falling off and it not making sense for rogues to have poisons on the target or anything like that. A lot of the minor issues that WoW Classic or Vanilla WoW had back in the day. The mail will function just like it did in Vanilla, so it will take 24 hours for you to be able to get mail from one character to another. I believe it was 24 hours, or at least an hour. Something like that. The auction house will still work the way that it did in regards to it, but they are going to keep like the mail features of the modern game just so that you can get the mail out quicker. That sounds to me like actually a good idea. And here we're going to get into the controversial parts that people didn't like, and for reasons that I'm just going to go ahead and say are not good enough. The biggest controversy that came out of that panel was the fact that they have decided that a loot trading system, which was implemented in Wrath of the Lich King, basically to bring people up to speed, back in Classic WoW, once somebody rolled need and picked up that item, it was soul-bound to them forever. You could not trade it over. You could not fix the problem. I mean, you could, but a lot of that stemmed a problem that we like to call ninja looting, because some people would just be a-holes and just loot and roll need on everything, because obviously everything was hunter loot, right? And that created a bunch of problems. Now, technically, if you had that accident, which Blizzard kind of admitted, most of the time when that happened, it wasn't some random a-hole, it was an accident. You could go to Blizzard, and Blizzard would then go through the process of taking that item from you and moving it over to the character that you wanted to give it to, which was really nice. but it was an arduous process. It actually took, I think it was up to 2 days for the request to even get to Blizzard, and then another 2 days for them to fix the problem. So if you also add in, holiday busyness and everything like that, we're talking about a 4 to 5 day wait period to fix one minor mistake in a Deadmines run or in a Blackwing Lair run kind of thing. And so they decided that in order to kind of skip the middleman here, most of those are accidents anyway, they're going to implement a system that they put in Wrath of the Lich King, which is that all loot is tradable for up to 2 hours after the loot has been looted. So at that point, if you look at it, you equip it, it isn't really an upgrade for you, you can then trade it to your buddy, who at that point could probably use it more than you. Now, obviously, the WoW Classic community went and didn't like that. Here's where I don't agree on the process. Their justification, I think, is sound here. It is to improve quality of life, not just for the player, but also for the Blizzard employees who had to deal with this as a nonsense issue numerous times back in 2004 to 2006. I'm not trying to belittle what people went through on that, but to them it was, oh, great, this again. Which I'll bet in their offices, they were just kind of sitting there going, can we automate this at some point? Can we take this out of here? Because at that point, they were probably dealing with loot problems and hacked accounts. That's really all they ever dealt with, and that's why customer service lines were so long, is because they were dealing with these problems consistently, and so it took forever for them to get to the other problems in the game, like say your character got stuck, or say you know, something else happened in the game and now for some reason you can't access your character. They couldn't tackle those because they got lost in the mix of, we want to be able to trade this item over, and we want to be able to fix this loot ninja, and blah, 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 blah. And so at that point, I agree with Blizzard's reasoning on this. They are basically trying to make it easier on themselves as well as on the players, so nobody has to wait 4 to 5 days. The WoW Classic community did not see it that way, and I'm just going to go ahead and be honest with you guys. A lot of the reasoning that I saw on the matter was either A, it's not Classic, which I'm sorry, given the reasoning that Ian gave you, is not a good enough argument, and B, the other problem was that people wanted to ninja loot. Like, we actually had people saying, people have the right to be an asshole in Deadmines, and you know what? They do. And that's going to be a thing, but if we can make it so that this system can help prevent that aspect, and you know that this guy's an a-hole, and you can't boot him right away, then you can just start rolling need against him. And this is also a counter to him too. So if that's the reasoning that you want it there, also that because you want to be able to take care of server social constructs, and the way that you're going to do that is if somebody ninja looted, and back in the old days, you were blacklisted because guilds knew each other and guilds talked to each other. And as soon as they saw, oh yeah, this player, he ninja'd like tier loot for our main rogue, and we're not happy about that, you want to recreate that system. And I already have my own problems with that happening in the YouTube scape. I don't need it there if it's a nuisance problem. If it was an accident, it doesn't need to happen that way. And a lot of people aren't willing to acknowledge this, but again, a lot of these were accidents. And so at that point, you wrecked a dude's life on the server because of an accident. Good job. Just I don't know if you can hear this, but good job. So I'm not there with you. I think that the justification Blizzard has given is a proper one. It makes sense as far as they are concerned, as far as the community is concerned. If you have this problem, you can solve it yourselves. The other problem also that people had was that the demo came in with sharding and phasing. And for those who don't know exactly what that feature is, it's kind of complicated. Again, it's a lot of programmer terminology, but it was a feature implemented in Wrath of the Lich King to basically help out with some of the server lag, as well as being able to help people out in if they were having individual lag, they could go and quest on their own, and it wasn't so strenuous. But it also phased content, so at that point, if people were further along in the story than you wouldn't necessarily appear. And so that was really helpful. I'm not necessarily going to go too much into that, but that was another major complaint that people had, is that, again, it's not Classic. It was implemented in Wrath of the Lich King. And I would also say that, again, your reasoning is not very justified here. They made their case very clear on the panel as well as in the Q&A. This is why they're putting it in. On top of that, if you go into further explanation, Another problem that they're looking to fix with sharding and phasing is, let's just say you need to go out and quest and kill a named mob in a cave somewhere. And after a while in Classic WoW, you could have a bit of a line to kill that character, because the way the system worked was the person who tagged him was the one that got credit, as long as they stayed alive. And so at that point, you had issues of like people trying to kill that character, or somebody would go in, kill the mob, and then know that somebody was in line for it and stay and then tag it so that nobody else could get it. And I saw a lot of justification going, well, they have a right to do that. Yeah, you're right, they do. I'm not going to disagree with you on that. I'm still going to call it an asshole thing to do. And so at that point, they're hoping to fix this problem with sharding and phasing. I'm with Blizzard on this one. I think their justification is sound here. Moving on to kind of wrap things up, because I'm already looking at the time of this video and it's getting ridiculous. Kind of like Diablo. So they're gonna do a bunch of these features that they're gonna be fixing until they get it out in release. They also have admitted that add-ons that pilot your character's rotation are going to be restricted. So they want to be able to find a middle ground between add-ons as well as old and new in World of Warcraft. So you're gonna have to be patient with them as they kind of figure that out. The content release plan looks like that when they get this out, it is going to have Molten Core, Onyxia, as well as Dire Maul, and the world bosses Kha'Zix, what is he called? Dreadlord Kha'Zix, as well as Azuragos out in Azara. They also said that the formal PvP reward system will not be there at launch, as they'll be working on that, and it also doesn't make sense for it to be there, as it was better than the gear that's going to be launching. It was better than Onyxia, it was better than Molten Core. So they're going to keep with that. Then they're going to go into a phased plan to do Stage 2, releasing Blackwing Lair, Battlegrounds, and 20-man Zul'Gurub. Then Stage 3 is going to be Encourage and the Tier 0.5 quests that came with it, Silithus, and the Green Dragon world bosses. You guys would probably know them better if you came in at Legion. The Dragons of Nightmare boss in the Emerald Nightmare raid is actually all of those dragons plus one other, I think. And then finally, Stage 4 is going to be the Naxxramas raid, the 40-man version, and Scourge Invasions. I don't think it's going to be the Zombie Plague, but it's going to be at least the Scourge Invasions that were happening at that time. They did also state that Silithus will include the opening of Encourage. They think that they have the tech to be able to make that work, as opposed to back in the day. So I actually do like the fact that they're going to do that for people, since a lot of people I talked to who wanted to be a part of that were kind of caught up in the lag mess. And so at that point, they didn't really get to experience it until much, much later on low pop realms that hadn't opened the gates yet. And they really want to be able to do a big event like it was back in the day. So we don't know necessarily the time frame for a lot of these launch details or when the next phase is going to begin, but Blizzard will keep us up to date as they go along. And that was pretty much it, or that was pretty much the panel. My thoughts on the matter is, I'm glad that some people are excited for WoW Classic. I'm glad that you get to be able to experience that. And unlike the people that I did mention earlier, there are a lot of people who agree with Blizzard on their methodology here. They agree with their reasoning, and they just simply, or they don't care. They just want WoW Classic again. They want to be able to just play vanilla. And yeah, you know what? I'm good on you. I'm glad that you're being able to get this, and as long as you're peaceful and working with the devs, then I don't really have a problem. For the others, I'm going to disagree with you guys. I'm not gonna go any further than that. I don't agree with your reasoning. I don't agree with the concept of like, it's not classic, therefore it shouldn't be there. I knew Blizzard was going to do this. I even said so in the Nostalrius video. I said that if they were going to do something like this, they were going to implement some modern features to be able to help out the player base that is just discovering this for the first time. You got to remember, a lot of people are coming in from expansions like Cataclysm, Mists of Pandaria, Wrath of the Lich King, Warlords of Draenor, Legion, and even Battle for Azeroth. And so at that point, they don't know vanilla WoW. All they know is the stories that you tell them. And when you, again, I really want to go down the peaceful route, because I'm not trying to call people out on this one. I do think that there's a lot of weird justification when it comes to WoW Classic, but bottom line is, for those who are excited, I'm glad that you're excited. I'm glad that you're getting what you wanted. I went back in there and remembered all the problems that existed in vanilla WoW and was kind of glad to never go back again. As you guys are seeing on this video, where I have a lot of footage from classic WoW, I'm very glad that I don't have to deal with those mechanics again. And as you guys can kind of tell in between pictures, I got kind of snarky when I played it, playing a dwarf paladin and seeing that classic paladins are back, and that's so great, isn't it? Or classic hunters and all of the complication that came with that class and mana management for the caster classes. It was nuts. But before this video gets any longer, I'm glad that you guys got what you wanted. I hope you guys enjoy it. They actually did say that if you have an active World of Warcraft subscription, you get access to WoW Classic, whether it be in summer or whether it be at the anniversary. You will get access to it. And I actually agree with that too. I think that a lot of people made some claims in the Nostalrius video as well as in various forums that if they got what they wanted, they'd pay for it. And I think Blizzard's holding your feet to the fire. And frankly, yeah, now's the time to ante up and actually show that you would actually do it. I didn't think that this was going to be free. I know a lot of people were speculating on the fact that it was. I didn't think Blizzard was going to be able to do that. I think they needed to pay for the server tech and whatnot. And since they don't know how many people are coming back, they need to have that security in place. But that's going to go ahead and do it for this video. I'm glad that you guys are excited. I'm glad that you guys are going to be able to enjoy it. But for me, I think I'm just going to go off and play modern WoW because that's more enjoyable to me. In the meantime, though, we'll be back with the final major panel that we had to cover in BlizzCon 2018, which is World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth. We'll see you then.